Remember eye and ear protection while you're working on tools, especially saws. My name is Bob Chase, and I've been working with wood for over 65 years now. The last 26 years or so I had my own cabinet shop right here in my own house. The first 2 or 3 years I just went around to other cabinet shops, several of them, and installed cabinets just to get an idea how they were made so I could learn a lot more about them. So then I started my own cabinet shop here, and since then I built and installed approximately 60 to 80 kitchens. This is all remodel. 1,200 to 1,600 cabinets, over 1,500 doors, most of those raised panels, over 500 drawers, mostly dovetail drawers in this small shop. And now here's a photo of some of the kitchens I've built here. These are real fancy ones here. Most of them weren't quite that fancy, but here I have cabinets. I pull cabinets out, arch doors, crown molding on there, and some of the cabinets up and some down just to give you nice looks. And this is a little bit more simpler one, and these are all miter doors here. Miter doors are getting very, very popular now. And so that's what I've been doing for quite a few years now. Now I just want to walk around this shop. It's a very small shop, and my idea of doing this is just to show you what you can do in just a very small space. This is probably less than maybe about the size of a car and a half garage, or maybe a 2-car garage would be bigger than this space here. So I'm just going to walk around so you can see the space I got here. I got a big planer, radial saw, huge sander, and spindle shapers, but it's just not. This is about the space here. That's about the only space I have to work in. But one thing nice about it is you never have to walk very far for anything. I have a table saw here, another spindle shaper over there, and I have a little room off here which I have a few things in, my drill press and sander and a few things like that. And then my workbench, I can work on both sides of it. The workbench here has a tool drop, which is real nice because all my tools that I'm using all the time are all right here, right in front of me. I don't have to reach around to open drawers or nothing. I just reach for them. And every once in a while I'll just take a wire, not a wire mesh, but a piece of hardware cloth, 1/2 inch, lay it on there, and take my vacuum cleaner and just suck out all the solder from them. So you can, if you got a 1-car garage, you're going to have just a half of a 2-car garage, you can do a lot. I built all these cabinets in this shop, but my system of building them was, first of all, I'd build the face frames, and I'd stack the face frames against the wall. Then I had all the dimensions for my doors and all my drawers. So then I could start making the doors, make all those, because they're flat, they don't take up much space. And then I could make the drawers, and as I made the drawers, I would take those upstairs in the garage, and that's where I did all my staining and finishing. And then when I get the drawers all done, I take the drawers up there, and then I make all the sides and tops and bottoms for the cabinets themselves, and assemble those. Each one, when it's assembled, is taken upstairs for finishing. And it worked out real good. Then I shipped the stuff right out of my garage because I got back in my truck right up to it. So you can do a lot of stuff in just a very small space. Now I've got several space-saving things here. Now if you see my router table here, there's a router here and a router here. It's got 2 routers on there, but it sticks out quite a way. So when I'm not using it, it actually pulls like that up out of the way. Over here I got my joiner. Right above the joiner I got my miter saw. Now I like to have a miter saw high like that so you can see right. If you're going way down lower, you're always bending here, but you can see right in there real easy that way. But that saves a lot of space that way. What I want to show you here is how to make a real nice jig, I call it, for cutting 8-foot sheets of plywood. It's pretty hard to cut them like this with just a saw, putting a mark on there and clamping some to it. This is a special jig here, and I'll show you how to make it. These pieces of plywood are 8 feet long. One right here is about 14 inches wide. That can be 14, 12, 13, anything. This one here is approximately 5¼ inches wide. That again can be up to 6 inches wide. So once you cut those, now you take your Skil Saw. Now whatever Skil Saw you want to use for this all the time, the distance from here to the blade, you'll have to measure that. and then actually take and mark something on this saw that it fits that gauge here, and then you can never make a mistake, otherwise you cut the gauge up sometime. Now what I want to do is on my saw I want to measure from the blade to this outside edge here. That's 4 1/4 inches. So remember that, 4 1/4 inches. I want to take this narrow piece, actually set it on here and measure over 4 1/4, but I want to go a little bit more. So I'm going to go 4 3/4. Then I'm going to clamp this down here. And I'm going to go down to the other end and set that at 4 3/4. Now I just take screws and I screw this down. Now remember, these are 3/8 inch thick. You could use 1/2 inch if you want to, but 3/8 makes it a little bit lighter that way. So I'm going to just go ahead and screw all this down, all the way down there. Now when you put this board on, do not use glue on it, because later on, if this gets all raggedy and that from cutting, you can unscrew this, move it over a 1/4 inch, and make a new cut here, and you got a brand new straight edge. One thing you really need to make sure is that this board here is perfectly plumb or perfectly straight line, because if it isn't, every other board you cut is going to follow that exact configuration. Now what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to take my saw. If you notice, my saw is running right up against this edge here, right here, and I'm going to take and rip this down. Now it's best to just to hold this here, the first cut especially. See, now you see it's cutting off, so it's making it just exact distance from your saw blade to the edge of your bottom there, what do you call it, pad. And then, so that'll give you the same cut every. And when you're cutting this, if you're right-handed, of course, you have to use your left hand for the saw, because it's a lot more convenient that way, because you can hold. Now here's why you don't want to glue this down, because if this edge here, as you're cutting, gets damaged later on, all you have to do is slide this over a 1/4 inch or whatever, and then screw it back down and make a new cut, and you got a whole new straight edge. Now these can be made in different lengths. I have some over there that are 4 feet long, or you can make them 4 feet, 6 feet, but I have one 4 foot, one 8 foot, and it works out. Now I want to cut a strip here, which will be exactly 3 inches wide. So I'm going to mark off 3 inches here, bring my gauge up roughly to it, not quite, just real close, because you got to clamp the other end first. And then I go down here and mark off exactly 3 inches down here. And then I pull my jig up to that pencil mark and back off just the thickness of the saw, and put a clamp down here. And you come up here on this end here and finish adjusting that, and then you bring that right up to the line, and then back off exactly the thickness of the saw, and then put a clamp here. Now we're ready to cut it off. Now when I'm cutting, I'm constantly watching my saw up against this edge here, because that's the important part there. Now what you have a nice strip here, exactly 3 inches right exactly 3 inches. Now you can cut off any width of here. Well, let's cut off one here, just a 1/2 inch wide. Show you how really slick this thing works. So I'm going to mark off a 1/2 inch here. Come down here, mark off a 1/2 inch down here. Clamp it. Now I'm going to cut another strip off here, just a very, very narrow one, 1/2 inch wide. So I mark off a 1/2 inch here. Bring my gauge real, just about up to it. Come down on the other end. Mark off 1/2 inch here. And then bring my gauge up to there. And then again back off the thickness of the saw blade. Clamp it down. Come down here and bring this same thing up to the mark. Always bring it up to the mark first and then back off. Back off to the thickness of the saw blade. If you want to get real technical, you could cut a little block the thickness of your saw blade and just set it there. So I clamp it here. Now one thing I remember, I could cut a tapered piece here very easily just by marking that one there and pushing this over. Well, let's do that on this one here. Instead of cutting off a 1/2 inch, let's cut off a 1/2 by 2 inches. So I'm going to bring this gauge back here to 2 inches. Again, plus the saw cut. And I'm going to clamp that there. So this is not only made for parallel cuts, but you can make angle cuts in any width you want. You can go even kitty corner on there if you want to. And now you see we got 2 inches on that end, and we only got a 1/2 inch here. Now this is not just limited for cutting plywood. You can use it. Here's a regular board, about 1.25 inches thick, and I'm going to run that down here and cut this out nice and straight. So if you get a whole bunch of boards that got a little bit of movement on, or not exactly perfectly straight, you can just pile them up here and straighten them all out. Then you got a nice straight edge here to run through the table saw right away. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this up on top of here. So I'm going to cut off about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. But what I'll have to do here, because the board, I can't clamp it back here because there's no board. So what I do is I take just a small screw on each end and put a screw in there. Now on the screws, make sure you use a flathead screw so there's nothing up there. Just now you can see on here, it's just as nice and straight and smooth as can be. You can probably get a better look here now, just how it's just nice and smooth, straight all the way across. But on a saw, I always keep a good sharp saw blade in it. It just does such a nice, much better job of cutting. But there, now that's perfectly straight. And then you can go from there. You can pile them up and then you can start running them through the table saw. Now you see I had a piece of 1/2 inch plywood I wanted it all cut up and 6-inch wide strips. So rather than measuring each time, I made 2 6-inch square blocks. Now we just laid our blocks on here at the very end here. Clamp it, bring your edge over to here, clamp that down and go to the other end. You don't have to measure each time. But as you can see, after full sheet, I don't only have this much left, but I'm running out of space. I got to put it over here next, but I'm running out of space to clamp it. So what I will do now, there's a little hole here. I'll just take a little tiny flathead screw and screw it down. Now here's a piece of plywood I'm cutting, piece of plywood I got left. And here's my rip fence. See, and I put 2 little just 3/4 inch screws, half flathead. They don't have to be very long, just enough to catch it. It doesn't hold too much. So I'm going to go ahead and make the saw cut. Now I made my cut. Now all I got to do is just take this little screw out of here. There. Cut the whole sheet up. Now a perfect use for this rip guide is doors. When you want to cut a door off, you know, put carpeting in there, they call you over there, you want to cut these doors off, Lord. But all you do is lay this on here, right up to where, however much you want to cut off. Take your clamps and clamp it down. Now, before you cut with the saw here, you got to remember your saw is turning up like this. This lawn on here is very, very thin, the top layer. So it's going to start tearing up. So what do? You take your utility knife. Now I suggest you put a new blade on a utility knife, because if your utility knives are like mine and my apron and everything, they're all dull already. So put a new blade in there and just come along very, very carefully and cut. Put a cut right along your guide here. I would go back on it several times. Then you take your saw now I want to show you a nice and clean cut that is. See, there's no tear ups at all on it. See, it's just as smooth as can be across there. Take a sanding block and just go across a couple times across there, and you got a real nice edge on it. Now the first rip guide I made like this was probably at least 20 years ago, and I've used them for cutting off doors for many, many, many years now. And I carry them in a truck all the time. They're only about a little 4 feet long, and they'll cut off almost all the doors you want. For more information, go to my website, CompleteGuideToWoodworking.com. Now this is actually a cover off of our DVD set, which is 2 DVD sets, disc 1 and disc 2, about 2.5 to 3 hours of videoing. Now what it is, we got this so that it's mostly for do-it-yourselfers or anybody else, but you don't have to have a lot of machinery to do all these things that show in the DVDs. All cabinets and doors shown in videos are made from just the tools shown below: table saw, miter saw, drill press, a router table and a router, and just these small tools here: air nailer, stapler, a little drill, little air compressor, router, a couple small routers. And you can make all those different tools, different machine projects we show in here. And here's what's in there. First of all, I tell you about safety in a shop. My workshop. Safe use of a table saw, that's very important. Safe use of a joiner. Rip guide for a Skil Saw, tables and benches using pocket hole screws, strong bookshelves, disc tool, face frame cabinets, shaker and miter doors, hanging cabinet doors, dental molding, wood edge countertops. This whole set sells for $34.95, and that's a real bargain for what you get in there. So all you have to do is go to our website, chasecabinets.com, and you can order. It's all ordered right there. You can order it through PayPal, or you can send us a check or money order, whatever you want like that. So thank you for watching, and appreciate you buying sets, because some of this money that we get from there goes to support my mission trips all over the world. I go to the world performing work like this, making cabinets for different places. Some places I have very few tools, and that's where I learned to do a lot of stuff with just a minimum amount of tools. My shop here, I do, if you notice there, I do have a lot of heavy tools, but this is a production shop. I make kitchen cabinets, and they can't all be made in small tools because you got to compete with all the other places, and so you got to make them fast and good. So thank you for watching.